culture is the foundation of great design. So when I start my own practice, we'll start with the people first. We'll start with building that studio culture and then build the business around that.
Hey, Growth Detect, welcome back. I am Tyler Sumla, your host of the Growth Detect podcast, and that is Joseph Cole, CEO of Culture, Architecture, and Design in Nashville, Tennessee. Now, he has managed to land some huge projects even with a small team. And in this conversation, he's going to share the inverse way that he has scaled his firm, the strategy that gets him in the door on these big projects, and the mindset that's helped him to take huge strides in his business growth. Now, every architect can take something away from how Joseph is approaching ownership. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. Before we dive in, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Running a firm is lonely, even when you're crushing it. And that's why I built the studio. It's a private group of growth-minded architecture firm owners who actually help each other win. Proven strategies, real conversations, fast results. If you are serious about growing, then go to growthdetect.com/studio or click the link in the show notes and apply to join us. All right, now let's jump in. Joseph, I am so excited to have you on the pod because we met actually because you came into this, you're a member of the studio, you joined, actually, I don't know, it was towards the end of last year, I think. But I remember immediately being very attracted to whatever it is that you're building over at Culture Arc in Nashville, because I immediately, within like 5 minutes of our conversation, realized how strategic you are and how intentional you are about the moves that you're making, and how they actually tend to be a lot different than a lot of the firm owners that I talk to. So I'm very excited to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, I am pretty excited. I've been a big fan of not only the studio, but the Growth Tech podcast. So when the opportunity arose to be on the podcast, of course, I would say yes. I'm like, let's do it.
That's right. And you've got the right gear on. I mean, we were just talking about this, but for those of you that are listening, you should pop over to YouTube because he's got a sweet like swag sweatshirt on. It's like lavender color, but I want
we. So I will say our company swag is a little bit atypical for most firms. So about us, we just celebrated one of our anniversaries, but I really doubled down full time on culture during the pandemic, during 2020, after I got laid off. And, everyone's at home or everyone's working remote. And, I wanted some branded gear, and I love wearing hoodies. Hoodies are my jam. So, actually got some branded hoodies, thinking that, I would be the only one that would want one, and people would perk up every time they would see the culture hoodie and say, oh, I want one of those. So, I started seeding those out, and it's funny because now I'll see people out in our sweatshirts and our hoodies. And it's like, it's the coolest thing. The strategy on the merch is, we give out crew necks. Only our team has the hoodies, and everybody on our team has kind of like their own thing when it comes to merch. So, I have tie-dyed stuff. Nobody else has tie-dyed stuff. We have tote bags, but one of our members, she has like a certain color tote bag that nobody else can get. We have bucket hats. Only one person has the bucket hat. So it's, it creates some, internal flair, but also some buy-in with the team.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's fun. You know that you're onto something when clients jump on and they're like, hey, I want one of those. Like, yeah, you can wear some of my swag around town. That sounds like an awesome idea. Honestly, I think it's the name Culture at the top. Like, the font is perfect. That does it, and it's just like it looks attractive. You know what I mean? Like on that as a whole. So you could start a clothing brand on the side. That's
I love that. I love that. A good friend of ours, over at City of Saints, so Fiji, she did our branding, and I mean she rocked it. So people love it. Even people that don't realize it's an architecture sweater, they just see the culture on it and they're like, hey, can I get one of those? So it's definitely been good indirect marketing for us, I'll say.
Yeah, and she crushed it, and that's what branding is all about, really. Whenever it happens organically, so that's good stuff. Okay, well, we just went off on a tangent, but that's okay because hey, swag is important too. But
very much so.
Tell us a little bit about the firm, and I'll set us up a little bit just to say that aside from the strategies that are going on behind the firm that I'm really excited about. What I'm most excited about and why I want the listeners to hear from you is that you are a relatively small firm and you are winning massive projects. You are involved in huge projects happening around the city and around the state. And so, that is something that almost every single small firm that I speak to wants to be involved in some way. And so I'm really excited to kind of dive into that strategy. But before we do, please tell us a little bit about the firm.
Okay, so I'm Joseph Cole. I'm the CEO and founder of Culture Architecture and Design. We are a full service architecture interior design firm based in Nashville area. So our cross section of projects and project types is huge, right? So our smallest project right now is a tiny home that is going to be turned into a studio for a local artist here. Our biggest project right now is we're working on the new Nissan Stadium, home of the Tennessee Titans. We're also working on Vanderbilt Stadium, their football stadium, which, I believe is going to be the best stadium in the SEC right now. So we got a big cross section of project types, everything from single family residential, multifamily residential, office buildings, office build outs, restaurants, hospitality, doing quite a bit in the athletic space. So you name it, we touch it. Initially, when I started culture in 2019, moonlighting. So I had kind of the backup. I've always wanted to be an architect. And then once I got to architecture school, I know I wanted to have my own practice. So, post graduation, came back home, worked for about 7.5 years. And then I had the phenomenal opportunity through a consortium fellowship to go get my MBA at Emory. So I went to Goswell Business School. Phenomenal experience. And I went there to initially study real estate and the synergy between architecture and real estate, right? And I got there and realized, man, I've been studying all things architecture for well over a decade now. This is like the once in a lifetime opportunity to study something that's completely unrelated. So I actually studied marketing. I studied entrepreneurship. I studied all things related to tech and startup companies and incubator culture. Had the opportunity to go study abroad in Southeast Asia and see their tech startup and incubator scene. Had zero clue how that would factor in architecture. But
Didn't matter at the
like,
time,
yeah,
but yeah.
it didn't matter at the time. Like, hey, this is cool and it's different. But post graduation, I ended up getting a great opportunity at Ginza, New York, in their tech startup and media studio. So there was like this synergy, right? It all came back together. And then, New York was phenomenal, great experience. Learned a lot about myself as a person, as a man, as an architect. But then moved back home due to sick family member, and I worked at a firm where they let me create my own role, but it just was a poor culture fit, man. And uh, I realized that I had the opportunity to work on projects with a dream client, big budget, easy timeline, cool design brief. The project turned out absolutely terrible. And it's because everyone wasn't bought into the project being the best design it could be and bought in for the client. Then I worked on those projects where it's aggressive timeline, tight budget, difficult client. Design brief was, pretty, boring or blah. And the project came out phenomenal. It's because everyone was bought in. So for me, I realized that, culture is the foundation of great design. So when I start my own practice, we'll start with the people first. We'll start with building that studio culture and then build the business around that. And that's worked phenomenal for us. I think that's our secret sauce right now. So, in 2019, I realized that I wasn't a good culture fit for the firm that I was currently working for. And one, frustrated night, came home on a Friday. That Sunday, I started the LLC paperwork. That Monday at noon, I got a phone call from our first client. And, luckily, I started culture and moonlighting in the background because about 6 months later, I was laid off. So in the midst of the pandemic, I decided to just really double down on all things culture versus trying to hunt for something else. And also for the time in Nashville, you got to think March 2020, we suffered a major string of tornadoes that came through and ravaged the city. So the city was in disrepair. The firm I worked for had to have layoffs. And then, we're trying to figure out what the pandemic was, right? Which was a very scary time. So I'll say I was taking on any and everything. So, you had a birdhouse or a mailbox, I probably was going to design it, right? But that was our early ethos, right? Let's take on any and everything, and keep the lights on. And I initially had this whole concept of what would it look like if you ran a architecture firm like a tech company. So I was based in Nashville. a lot of our design team was either in Brooklyn or Chicago, so they weren't close by. And that worked for us, right? As long as they had a laptop and Wi-Fi, they can make it work. But once, outside opened back up, as I would say, it became difficult because we would have, meetings on opposite ends of town. And I'm here in Nashville, and if everybody else is in Brooklyn, they can't help me with those meetings. So we've transitioned to a team that's fully in Nashville. And I'm really, really proud of the team we put together. Everybody's a rock star. And everybody I brought on, I have like long-term plans for them. So I'm not bringing people on just to get a project done. We'll figure it out later. When I give an offer, I'm already thinking about what's the next role that we can coach them into, and what does the, I guess, long-term future of culture look like.
That is something that literally every single employee wants to hear, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's one thing to hear it, but then it's another thing to actually like see the strategy like being planned out. Because almost everyone, when they join in, it's like, oh yeah, there's opportunities for growth here, right? That's what everyone hears. But like to actually see and realize, oh no, like this is part of the strategy. I can see where I'm going to fit in the future after I get to that point. I think it makes a big difference. But I mean, there's only one thing missing, I think, from this intro that I'm super excited about, because you have everyone salivating over, the new Nissan Stadium and Vanderbilt's stadium. What's the size of your team, Joseph?
So size of our team, we're currently, when it comes to designers, we got a team of 6. And then when it comes to the leadership or executive staff, everyone's fractional. We probably have 5. So, when most people found their firms, they go out, they get designers to do the work, and then they figure out the back end portion later. I did it in the inverse way. So when I started, first I got IT, and then I got a really good accountant. And then we transitioned to a really good CFO and bookkeeper and tax advisor. And we got HR on the team as well. And the whole point of that was, let's build the infrastructure first, right? So that when I started adding team members, everything was already set, so that I'm not, trying to figure out how to set up their email or how to set up their direct deposit or their PTO and everything else. So we have the structure. So, and I'm really glad that we've done it that way, because we've seen a lot of growth over the last 2.5 years. And had we not had the infrastructure, we wouldn't have been able to grow like this successfully. So, the benefit of it is, I've been in quite a few coaching programs. There's a program here in the Nashville Entrepreneur Center in Nashville, where, that's where we're based out of, the Nashville Entrepreneur Center, when I first started. And the great thing about it is it was like a built-in incubator, in that standing at the coffee machine, you're standing next to them somewhere and like, hey, what's your business? And like, I'm an accountant. Like, hey, I need an accountant. Let's talk. So I initially started there with a floating membership, kind of floating around the EC. And then, from there, I got a desk. And then I got an intern, so I got another desk, and eventually we started taking over more and more space. And now we've moved to a different co-working space that better fits our needs. But that was the origin story, and kind of, circling back, Tyler, to what you were talking about like sharing the vision. I think it's easier for your team to buy in when they know there's a bigger picture. So initially starting, it was very, very much so bootstrap. At times it's still bootstrap, but when they know, like, hey, Joseph has this bigger vision. Here's how I fit into it. Here's where we're at now. Here's where we're going next. And, also them understanding that, things change over time. So we just had our 5-year anniversary, and for 5 years, we did a 5-day celebration. So we celebrated something every day of the week. So, we had a day where we did community service with Monroe Hardin. They do foster care here in Nashville. We had an employee appreciation day. We had a team building activity, went and did escape room. And then we ended the week with a big party to, bring in all our consultants and clients and everything else. But I would say one of the highlights was one day I had this presentation called State of the Culture, right? And I literally showed them where we started, where we're at right now, and where we're going. So, and I mean, it's very candid. So I showed them a picture of me sitting at a ping pong table in the living room, starting culture. Like, look, this is culture. This is how culture started. Me with a laptop with duct tape on it at a ping pong table with a cup of tea. Like that's how we started. Here's where we're at right now. Here's where we're going. Here are the projects that we're going to continue to do and go after. Here are the projects we're no longer going to target. So, everyone started understanding like, wow, we've made a lot of progress over these last 5 years, but also here's the plan for the next 1, 2, 5, and 10 years for culture.
That's amazing. I mean, that's awesome transparency. And I think that gets people excited when they realize that they're part of some kind of momentum shift and that there is trajectory. I think what you missed is that you went into that escape room with 7 designers, but you only left with 6. So there's one that's still stuck in there, I think.
You know what? It's funny. So a lot of our younger designers came and they were way better at the game than I was. Like
they're built for this, man.
I just turned 40, man. I felt like the old man in the room. They were like zipping around and figuring out the puzzles, and I was just in the way at that point. But it was a good time. It was a good time.
All right, quick break. Here's the deal. No one tells you how isolating running a firm can feel. You're the owner, you're the marketer, you're the salesperson, and somehow you're still guessing. And that is why I created the studio. It's the place for architecture firm owners who want more. More clients, higher fees, real momentum. Inside, you'll get over 100 growth strategies built for firms like yours. Live workshops, resource libraries, sales systems, AI tools. But the best part really is that it is a tight-knit group of owners who push you, who share wins, and who help you grow together. This isn't just another course. It is a business-changing inner circle. If that sounds like what you've been missing, then just go to growthdetect.com/studio or click the link in the show notes and apply to join us inside. All right, now back to the show. That was the strategy. I'm glad that you brought it up. This like kind of building the foundational executive team before you really start hiring out. And you're still the only firm owner that I've ever met that's done that. But what I love about the strategy, I mean, I can already tell you what firm owners, what business leaders are thinking right now. They're like, I don't know what the business is going to do yet, right? So that seems like a huge risk. But you did it, I think, smartly because it was more, like you were saying, it was more of like a fractional perspective. So that is a great option for early business owners to get that executive team going because it's much cheaper, it's more affordable, and to your point, it makes it much easier to scale going on. So like, yeah, it might be a little bit more risky than theoretically than like hiring the designer that can actually do the production work of the things that you're doing. But I think the other thing that I love about it, though, is that it's like, no, I am confident that I'm building something bigger here. And so, like, I'm going to build this executive team. Like, you kind of, like, you manifest it, essentially. It's like you don't give yourself an option. Yeah. Like, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Like, so, when it came to culture, or when it comes to just business building, I got a lot of peers, and sometimes the approach is I'm approaching this like a solopreneur. I'm going to be the one-stop shop. And that's totally fine if that's the big vision. That's not necessarily the vision of culture. Starting with culture, it's more so how can we grow this thing? So that's even another underlying like reason of why we named the firm culture instead of, Colin Associates, right? Because I didn't want the brand to necessarily be tied to myself. At Gensler was a phenomenal opportunity working with huge clients, big name clients. And then you walk into the room and they're like, "Where's Arthur Gensler at?" And I'm like, "Sir, I've never
like,
met him either. I would meet him." Like, so I didn't want to tie the brand to us, but I also think it gives the team members a level of buy-in, seeing that, hey, this isn't the Joseph show. This is our show. Like, so there's just like communal buy-in. But I will say on the opposite end of that, when I first started from a marketing standpoint, I didn't want to put my face out there. Like, I wanted to be a culture. So it's like, and I think a lot of, small architecture shops, especially when you're first starting, like, you want to give this perception of a team. So you always want to talk about you never just want to show yourself. And that's where I was stuck. Now I've realized that when you're a young business, you're a founder-based brand. So I can say culture is a team all day, but people want to see Joseph because that gives them someone to connect to, right? They're like, how is Joseph and his team doing, kind of thing. And it feels great now going out and, someone sees me and they ask about one of my team members. So now our team is being associated with the culture brand. So, but yeah, when I first started, a lot of smoke and mirrors until we can get it there. And, the other benefit of building out that system was to ensure that we were ready for the next step. So I work with our CFO is Ashley Harden. So she is a concierge CFO. And the great thing about having her as our CFO is, projections. So, I know what it feels like work wise, like, hey, we need like two more designers. But what do the fees say? What does accounts receivable say? How long is it taking us to collect? Oh, we can't add four people right now. Okay, or can we get one in? So there's always going to be this level of kind of hunkering down and kind of overworking until you get the team. But having that, having our IT set up, like think it's something maybe don't misquote like $300 a person. And when you're first starting, like you
Yeah.
need every single dollar, right? Until something goes wrong and you're spending your whole day trying to troubleshoot and fix it and repair a laptop when you're an architect and you know nothing about repairing laptops. Or if you do, yes, you know how to repair laptops, but somebody else can do this while I do business development and fill out invoices. All of that stuff ends up paying for itself. So
Well, yeah, because your time is the most valuable time out of anyone's in the whole company, and that's literally on an hourly basis, but also just like from a management perspective. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's brilliant from that standpoint. I'm curious. Okay, so obviously you're not like the only architect of new Nissan
correct.
Stadium. You're not the only architect of Vanderbilt. There's lots of involved,
Correct.
but as a small team, you've managed to get your foot in the door. And so I know there's so much strategy behind this, but like walk us through a little bit of the first time, right? Of you kind of figuring out and trying to piece together, hey, what are the challenges that you're facing at that moment, and some of the ideas, I guess the challenges that led to the strategy that has gotten you this foot in the door and gotten you involved in these amazing projects.
So, I'll say, initially there's this push to get on any and everything. And I mean, literally taking on any and every project. Realize that wasn't healthy, that there are no small projects. They're just small fees, right? There's always a certain level of bandwidth all projects are going to take. So one thing we were very strategic about is getting business certifications. So being getting a certification as a small business, certification as a minority owned business. The benefit of those were at times they would get our foot in the door to at least start having conversations. So, one area where businesses or firms go wrong is they get those firms and that's what they lead with and that's all they have. For us, our approach is let's use those certifications to start the conversation. And once the conversation is started, let's show them all the great things about culture. So let's show them our qualifications, our quality of work, the bandwidth we have. But, I will say like that's the technical side, right? That's the formal side. But also I'll say on the opposite end of that, what's just as important is the experience that people have when they work with you, whether they're the end user or whether you're working under the umbrella of another architect. So for us, say, for example, I would say one of our first really big breaks was First Break Stadium at Vanderbilt. So we appreciate Populous for giving us a chance to work on that project. With that, my goal was to make sure Populous enjoyed working with culture and that every time we step foot on site, people saw a high level of professionalism and they were wondering like, hey, who are those guys, right? Even in not in a positioning culture kind of way, but more so, hey, let's see how we can continue to reinforce that Populous brand and make them look good. How can we make things easier for the contractor? The benefit of that is people talk, right? So when there's another big project in town, yes, there's the formal RFP and RFQ process, but the people that are selecting the people in those documents, they're also asking around town. So when they start asking around town, they're going to say, hey, how was your experience working with culture? We love working with those guys. We work with them again. That is just as great as any kind of document that we can put out, like that word of mouth. And I think that has really helped us in continuing to gain projects in the associate architect role, whether it be working on the Metro Water building, whether it be working on the new Titan Stadium. You don't realize like the architecture community is so small, right? We are working under TVS for the Titan Stadium, under Populous for First Bank Vanderbilt Stadium. Populous is in Kansas City. TVS is in Atlanta. I am sure there's some kind of mutual connection where someone picked up the phone before they selected us to say, "Hey, be on our team." Somehow they got the green light from Populous. I'm sure of it, or they likely got the green light from an HMK when it's working on Metro Water. And I would even say, just like really understand how to position your firm and yourself, right? So there have been projects where we're the local or we're the associate architect. Well, we're the ones bringing the expertise. So, there's every one of those projects is going to have a different dynamic, whether it be you're just doing production, whether you're leading design, whether you're leading a client, whether you're a subject matter expert. We've had projects where we've leveraged that we're the subject matter experts. We're the right firm, but this other firm has the bandwidth and longevity and systems and processes. So, every time I make sure I go after a project, I curate like what's the approach that culture is going to take. So there's not a boilerplate culture approach. Like everything is strategic. Even the projects we go after, like, we're intentional about what we go after and what we don't. Like if we go after a project, there's a reason, right? Like why we want that project in our portfolio. Either we think we can bring something to the table or not. So, and all of those opportunities to be associate architect, I think that directly contributed to us getting more looks as the prime. So now we're prime architect on some of these larger projects. So like right now I'm working on Lewis County Library. I think having a lot of those bigger projects in our portfolio definitely helped on that. And not to say that we only had big projects as the associate, but I do think it helped with some of that brand credibility, right? So our other big projects that we were doing on our own, they may not have the same brand cachet as a Vandy or as a new Nissan Stadium or anything like that.
Yeah, I think what's really important about everything that you're saying is that you're approaching every opportunity with a long-term perspective, right? So it's like it's a step in the direction where you want to be going, which I think is easy to sometimes forget. Because like you get this amazing opportunity to work with a firm like Populous, for example, and it's really easy to be like, great, we got it. We got exactly what we wanted. How can we almost like selfishly like utilize this opportunity to get us more of what we want? And you kind of flipped that on its head and you said, okay, how can we position ourselves in the most professional way possible to make it as easy as possible for a firm like Populous to work with us, to provide as much value to a firm like Populous, because they're going to keep doing projects like this and we want to be on their good side. And so it's like, it's also remembering like who it is that you're working for, right? Who's
100%.
making those decisions, and making sure that you are actually putting your energy towards the right thing, because it's equally as easy to do those relationships poorly, right? And to approach it selfishly and almost to try to be like, hey, like Populous isn't that good. Like you should hire cultural architecture instead. And it's like, no, that's probably like, that might get you through that. Like you might still have that project at the end, but you've severed the relationship at that point. Right. And instead you're approaching everything.
Yeah. And I think, for firm owners, especially small firm owners, the principals or the founders probably have that perspective. Your design team may not. So it's been big for us to communicate the difference between the end user and the client, right? And making sure like, hey, like have you checked in with Populous to make sure they're good and they don't need anything else from us? Hey, have you reached out to TVS? Hey, have you reached out to TM partners? Like making sure that, one, they're enjoying the experience with us, but also two, we bring a sense of ease, right? So if there's like, hey, this, ad services came on, we're not sure how we're going to get it done. Hey, we'll come on. We'll help you get those additional services done. Does it increase our scope? Yeah, of course, but also it eases the morale, right? Or hey, like the contractor needs an architect on site by lunchtime. We can't fly there in time. Hey, we're on the way already. I'll send somebody over there to handle it. Don't you worry about it. We'll get back to you in a second, kind of thing. So we, it really like, I can't sell it enough. It really is about the culture. Like culture is the foundation of great design. Like I'm so glad that I built a business around culture because I'm starting to see everything just come to fruition from my initial plans.
Yeah. I mean, culture is the outcome. I mean, communication is for sure the vehicle that you're using to make all of that happen, right? I mean, because it's so much easier to be an associate architect and to wait for someone to reach out to you and tell you what needs to happen next. And you're saying, hey, proactively go out, reach out to them, see what they need, see what they need from us to work. And that step like that of just taking the action and not waiting for something to come to you is literally the difference between firms that never scale and firms that do scale. Like that simple step is the difference. It's being proactive, like what you're doing today.
I would say being proactive and also mentality and approach. So a big thing for us is I've talked to other founders and especially through the studio, right? And they're like,
Yeah.
How in the heck are you getting these projects? And not even in an arrogant way, but I'm more so like, why not us? Why not us? Why not now? No, we don't need to wait a couple years before we go after these projects. No, we don't need to ask like some team members like we're pretty darn impressive right now. And with that approach, I think we carry ourselves a bit different and realize that we're qualified and we deserve to be at the table. And once we're in those positions, then we own those positions. Internally, I'm always telling the team, own your project, right? Yes, staffing is important. Yes, the task on staffing is important. But if you see something that needs to be done, or if you see something coming down the pipeline and you need to raise a flag and, let somebody know, like that ownership is worth its weight in gold.
Mm. I used to, I love the why not us approach. I grew up playing baseball and I had a baseball coach that used to always say how do you know? And his point was, how do you know if you didn't dive for the ball that you weren't going to get it, right? Or something like that. How do you know that you weren't going to be safe if you didn't slide into the base, right? And so I love that, oh, we can win that project. Well, prove it. How do you know? Like go out and try to win it and see what the heck happens, because eventually you might spend your time, you might get 10 no's first, but eventually you're going to get a 1 because you're going to be using that feedback loop to understand what's working. And in that process, it might have taken you a year to get that win, but you've skipped 5 years of doing the slower, smaller step-by-step process along the way. And so that's what's so brilliant about it. Yeah.
Well, I'm saying it's definitely an athlete's mentality. My one of my mantras is shoot or shoot, right? You got to shoot the ball at some point. And if you miss, there's no loss. You already don't have the project, right? So let's go after it anyway. Let them tell us no.
Joseph over here bringing Mamba mentality into
it's 100%. It's 100% Mamba mentality. Let's go after it. Let them tell us no, right? Because they might say yes.
Yeah.
Or they might say yes, but. And there's some kind of caveat on how we're going to work. But those opportunities are, paramount. If we would have said, no, not yet, or we want to add a few more people, then, we would have talked ourselves out of some phenomenal opportunities that have caused us to grow in capabilities, but also in size. Because I will say that's one thing I did want to emphasize is that on every one of these projects, so there's this, I think as a small firm, founders work so hard. No matter how many designers you bring on, they don't realize how hard you're working. Whether it's the long nights after everybody leaves, whether it's the weekends, whether it's maxing out personal credit cards and everything else to go get the hardware and software you need until a client pays you, or taking out lines of credit to pay your staff until you collect some invoices. I don't think anybody really understands just how hard it is to run a business. And in that, there's always this temptation to reward yourself. Like, hey, we got this big project. You know what? I'm going to cash myself out and go on a nice trip or buy a nice car or something like that. I deserve it. I haven't taken that approach. My approach has been every project that we come out of, especially if it's a large project, whether we're associate or prime, I want to make sure culture is better at the end of that project. All right. So whether it's we added staff because of this project. We added new upgraded hardware, new software, new capabilities. Every single time we come out of a project, we want to be better so that, one, we're not wasting that opportunity, but two, we're ready for the next. So what culture looked like when Populous added us to the team is very different. Very, very different. New office, new hardware, new employees. And it's not solely because of that project, but, I did make sure that I leverage that opportunity so that culture can be bigger and better at every single stage.
Yeah, it's a business benefit. Like more,
Yeah.
you have to your point, you have to put the business in front of your personal desires. Like when you
Hmm.
have a business, that's like
Yep.
you literally have other teams, other employees. How do you keep them around? How do you keep them engaged, so that they keep on giving just as much to you as you are to them? It's a two-way street, and
Yeah. It's like,
I mean that's
do I give a
awesome.
bonus to my team, or do I pay off some of this debt, this business debt? It was like,
Oh man, your employees are listening to this. They're like, I don't know, did I get that bonus or not?
yeah.
No.
Well, it's more so like, let's give it to the team because it improves morale.
Yeah.
We've seen it looks like when the morale is down, right? That morale is that like you can't quantify it. You can't quantify it. We've had employees where they weren't necessarily a good fit, and my analogy is they were the poop and ice cream, right? No matter how great that bowl of ice cream is, if it has a little bit of poop in it, nobody wants it, right? And we've had those employees that either weren't bought in, or didn't see the vision, or didn't see themselves there, and felt like they weren't a good fit. And when they left, the morale went up. So I'm big on protecting the culture and
Oh man,
morale.
that is a terribly wonderful analogy that that
Yeah, yeah,
really
bowl and ice cream.
that really brings it home. Well, I mean, it's working. The trajectory's going in the right direction. I mean, what would you say to firm owners here that are listening? They're small firms. They're looking to get into those larger projects. Like, what's the first step, and the mentality that they should take as they approach that?
So, one, why not us? Go after it. Let them tell you no. Two, whatever you leverage to get your foot in the door, whether it's a certification or a relationship or a prior project, don't fully lean on that or exclusively lean on that. Also, when you're having those conversations, bring a list of all these other great things you bring to the table. Three, remember who your client is, right? Who we're trying to keep happy. Client might not be the end user. And then, my big thing is come out of that project better. Whether it's we know how to do these projects now. We got new software. We got new team members, or like both and like all of those things. Just be strategic. Make sure you build your team around you. My CFO is big because I dream big, and I'm like, hey, I want to do this. I want to build out the office. I want to do it, and she's like, yeah, we can't do all of this at the same
That's right.
time. She's probably
Make
gonna be
someone
laughing
rein
when
you
she
in.
watches
Make
this.
someone rein you
Yeah,
in. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like bring me in. Another sports analogy, like I always hear coaches say, I'd rather have a player where you got to tell them whoa than to sick them, right? Like that's what we're looking at. We want the people that go get after it, not the people that we got to kind of push out there, right? For an owner, I got to be the same way. I'd rather have someone that's like, hey, Joseph, you probably need to like take a step back versus, hey, Joseph, you're not doing enough. Like we're going for it all right now at Culture.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Joseph, for joining us, for letting us peek a little bit behind the curtains here and seeing how you've grown, how you've managed to scale, and also thanks so much for being a part of the studio. Really appreciate having your
Oh
perspective.
yeah, yeah. Let's plug the studio real quick. So I think entrepreneurship can be a bit lonely regardless of your profession. Um, I've been in a lot of coaching programs outside of the studio that are for entrepreneurship in general. They're great because they force us to step back and say, oh, architecture is nuanced, it's different than everything. It's not. There's some things that are nuanced, but you got to get collect on your invoices. You got to follow up on those, like that basic stuff, right? But then the studio is great because it's this nuanced approach where you got a group of people that just get it, right? It's different running an architecture firm and trying to go after clients and the risk that's associated with some of these projects, and you know being able to bounce off business development approaches or HR approaches, or ask, hey, what software are you using? I definitely think the studio is invaluable community that also comes with some invaluable tools.
Appreciate that, man. Really appreciate you. And that is a huge benefit, honestly. Like, when I built it, I was like, oh, it's going to be the education, it's the resources that are inside. And those are great, obviously, and people are using those all the time, and they're kind of the vehicle. But more than that, people enjoy the community. It's having other firm owners to speak to and engage with and get feedback from. And the perspectives inside the studio are great because they're so wild. They're people just like you, that are all trying something different, right? They're all growth minded. They all want to see others succeed. And so it's just good to have that support system around you. So I really appreciate you being engaged there, and so thankful that you were able to join us on the podcast, and keep up the good work, man. We'll be in touch.
All right. Thanks so much, Tyler. I appreciate you.
Okay, Growth Detect, thanks so much for tuning in. If you are enjoying the show, then please share it with a friend and leave a review so other amazing architects can find us. And if you are a growth-minded architecture firm owner that wants to surround yourself with others on the same journey, then apply to join us inside the studio. Just go to growthtech.com/studio or click the link in the show notes. I'll see you next time, friends.